You are listening to the X106 podcast. I'm Ryan Elliott, and with me is Evan Brown today. We're going to take a look at a preview for the Chiefs and Patriots game going on tomorrow, and we're also going to take a look at some college football, get a little preview of next week, and a little bit of a recap of what happened this past week in college football, and that's all coming right here on the X106 podcast. All right, Evan, football season kicks off Thursday night,
Absolutely.
Tomorrow night. In Foxborough, it's Patriots-Chiefs to kick the season off, and in the Kansas City area here, we figured we'll give quite the preview of this game. And what are your thoughts on Chiefs-Patriots?
Well, I mean, obviously, going into Foxborough and trying to win it is obviously, not a very easy thing to do. Tom Brady's 51-1 since 2007 when facing AFC teams at home in the regular season, so that doesn't really bode that well. And also it's Tom Brady, the GOAT, after last season and everything. All the analysts and all the experts, per se, are just saying it's going to be a rout. But, we're Chiefs fans. We've been 24-3 in the last in the last season or something like that. Or I saw that stat. I'll have to find it and just, make sure about that. But yeah, the Chiefs aren't going to go down without a fight. We've seen that, time in and time out. So many turnovers, and we create so many turnovers, that sort of thing. We're not just going to sit down and roll over for this team.
And as fun as it is to talk about Tom Brady, as important as a lot of people see Tom Brady in this game, I don't know how much that has an effect unless it's a close game heading into late in the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. Brady's a great quarterback. Brady's going to hurt you. It's going to happen. This game comes down to the defenses. Mm-hmm. Which defense can contain who? The Patriots are going to be tough to contain, but the Kansas City defense is very good.
Absolutely.
And it's also, to me, going to come down to the running game. Last year, of course, LeGarrette Blount had almost 1,200 yards and 18 touchdowns rushing for the Patriots. And Spencer Ware last year for the Chiefs, who they will not have Thursday night or for the rest of the season, having to have season-ending knee surgery. It will be Kareem Hunt taking most of the carries for the Chiefs, and it's going to be, as Chiefs fans, hopefully a coming-out party for him.
Crossing my fingers.
He's going to have a difficult time with a very tough New England Patriots defense.
Absolutely, and you talk about Tom Brady, and in the fourth quarter is really the only time it really matters, but you look at all the, well, I guess not all of the weapons he has anymore since Julian Edelman isn't there anymore, but you still got Brandon Cooks just to walk in and take his place, which is arguably he's the better of the two, in my opinion. He's had Drew Brees thrown to him his whole career, and he's not too shabby of a quarterback either. And you kind of maybe step up into that higher echelon with Tom Brady and dink passes or what's. Those over-the-top floaters. Brandon Cook's got four speed, something like that. And Marcus
sub
Peters,
4.4.
Yeah, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to look at, but the Patriots defense. We're going back to the defense thing. They gave up the least amount of points in all of football last year, and I'm pretty sure we were top 2 or 3 in the turnover ratio last year.
Yes.
So it's going to be a clash of the giants in both aspects, offense and defense. Not saying that the Chiefs have this superstar loaded offense, but Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill there to kind of open up the field and maybe open up some other receivers to get into play. And Kareem Hunt, talking about him, he's great out of the backfield and catching passes. So from what I've heard, Andy Reid has nothing but good things to say about him. So everybody's got their fingers crossed.
Well, and that's one thing that I think differs between these two offenses is you look at the Patriots offense is a wear you down, they're going to run the football, and then Tom Brady's going to hurt you eventually. They will wear you down with short passes. They're going to give it to guys that are possession receivers, and with the exception of Brandon Cooks, Cooks is the one outlier in this offense. He's the speed guy. Mm-hmm. He's something that you don't see all the time from the Patriots. There's not always a speed guy, a deep threat, and that's something that I think has changed this New England offense a little bit and has opened it up a little bit for Tom Brady, which is dangerous for the Chiefs. Whereas you see the Chiefs offense, and it's speed all over the field. Tyreek Hill, DeAnthony Thomas has speed. Kareem Hunt out of the backfield has speed. Travis Kelce's probably the fastest tight end in the game.
Oh, I'd agree.
This is a team that has the weapons to create big plays and really to hurt some of the best defenses in football as far as short passes. Get a short pass to the outside to a guy like, say, DeAnthony Thomas or Tyreek Hill and let him work some magic with it. And that's something that a lot of teams in the NFL, and specifically the Patriots, they don't really have that guy. And that's something that I think could be an advantage for the Chiefs as well, especially against the Patriots defense that only allowed 88 yards per carry or 88 yards a game last year. And that's a pretty stingy number if you're the Patriots defense. 88 yards a game is not easy to allow every year. And so one of the best rush defenses in football, and a team in the Chiefs that they do like to run the football, and they did when Spencer Ware is in there, but I think we're going to see a little bit more of the short passing attack without Ware and with Kareem Hunt in the backfield.
And going back to you said you were talking about LeGarrette Blount not too long ago, and his touchdowns and how many yards he had. He had an insane season. And just looking at the Chiefs, last year we didn't even have 1,000-yard rusher, and I'm not sure if that was the first time in 10 years, because Jamal Charles has been going off for however long. But I just thought that was interesting. The Chiefs didn't have a 1,000 or 1,000-yard rusher, and it might be interesting to see what Kareem Hunt might be able to do out of that backfield this year.
And as a rookie stepping into a big role at running back, especially for the Kansas City Chiefs, again, a team in that Andy Reid West Coast style that likes to run the zone, likes to try to pound the ball whenever they get the chance, it'll be interesting to see how well he does, because he's a little bit of a smaller back. He is a guy he's the all-time leading rusher at Toledo. He came out of college and was very, very good, but there will be bumps in the road. There will be difficulties. He's going to get stuffed a few times, especially against the Patriots, and we'll see how he reacts to that, because it'll be interesting to see how he can come back from maybe getting stopped for a 3 or 4 yard loss on a play, or getting really, really popped by a linebacker. And that's the kind of comeback that you want to see from your number one guy at running back. And I think this tomorrow night is going to prove whether or not Kareem Hunt is the guy that they want in the backfield, or if they want to go with a Sharkhandrick West or a C.J. Spiller in that backfield.
Yeah, but I think they're going about it the right direction. It's not like Kareem Hunt's going to get every single carry, the whole game. I think people are kind of expecting that, but you shouldn't be. He's going to get first and second down, probably not third down. Well, he might, but they're going to mix it up. They've got three arguably pretty good running backs. C.J. Spiller could have a resurgence this year. He's had pretty down years in the past, 3 or 4. But if you see what he did in the preseason, I can't tell you how many runs I've seen him just run up the sideline 30, 35 yards, and and he waits for those blocks. He might have a touchdown. But I think the Chiefs are getting very overlooked this year. Since we traded away Jeremy Maclin. Obviously that's not the only reason, but we were the second best team in the AFC last year, 12-4, and Andy Reid's famous for having those winning streaks, especially in Kansas City. So I don't know. I just really think that we're a team to watch this year. I feel like Chiefs fans always say that every year, but that is what it is.
Well, and the one thing that really catches my eye is the coaching matchup. Everybody seems to think that New England, Bill Belichick it's not even arguable at this point, one of the greatest coaches in NFL history, if not the greatest coach in NFL history. But a lot of people think that this coaching matchup is a lot farther apart than it really is. People are overlooking the fact that Andy Reid is a fantastic football coach. He has had winning season after winning season after winning season. I think he took the Eagles to the NFC Championship, I believe, 4 times. He took them to the Super Bowl once and a near loss to these New England Patriots. And so this coaching matchup is a lot closer than I think a lot of people realize. Because Andy Reid's had that success, he knows how to get a team to the playoffs. He knows how to win football games, and that's something that is overlooked a lot in the fact that he hasn't been able to get it done and actually get over the top with a Super Bowl ring. But this Kansas City team, the weapons are there to take down the New England Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody in the NFL is going to do it, it's the Kansas City Chiefs or it's the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Absolutely.
Because the weapons are there.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to beat the Steelers, you have to score. Or in order to beat the Patriots, rather, you have to score. And so the weapons are there. It's just a matter of whether or not they can execute and whether or not the defense can show up and give this offense a chance to beat the Patriots.
Absolutely. And I mean, going back to Andy Reid, I mean, he spent 14 years in Philadelphia, and he doesn't have a losing record. I mean, anytime you can find a coach that has doesn't have a losing record, I mean, you're going to snag him. And that's what the Chiefs did. And ever since, 11-5 his first year, 9-7 next year, 11-5 the next year, 12-4 last year. Who, I mean, arguably, well, I would say that that 2015 team I thought was more talented than last year's. And I mean, he proved me wrong. He won an extra game. I mean, in his 14 years in Philadelphia, he won 130 games, only lost 93, and one tie. I just thought I'd throw that one in there. But no, in Kansas City, he's won 43 and only lost 21. He made it to the playoffs 19 times while he was in Philadelphia. Already made it 4, one each year. That's a pretty good record.
And that's a fantastic card as a coach, and certainly not to be overlooked. Well, that's our preview for Chiefs Patriots Thursday night. Coming up, we're going to take a look at what we saw from college football this past week and what we might see a little bit this week. So stay tuned. You're listening to the X106 podcast. You are listening to the X106 podcast. I'm Ryan Elliott. I'm here with Evan Brown, and now we're going to take a look at some college football, what happened last week, what we're looking for this week. Evan, some really good games last week, some really, really bad games last week. Just tell me a little bit about what you saw last week from college football.
I mean, obviously, the Alabama-Florida State game, I thought was going to be a lot better and closer of a game. I mean, it was still an all right game, but I just really feel awful for Florida State. They number 3 ranked team coming in. They had all this hype. Francois was going to be, I don't know if he was going to be the next, best college quarterback, but I mean, things were looking up for him, and it didn't really help him going up against Alabama the first week. But he gets injured. Now he's out for the whole season. And now you got a true freshman as your starting quarterback. I forget his name, but I know his last name's Blackman. And he goes to Florida State, so he's got to be good. It's just you never want to see that happen. You don't want to see any injuries at all, but especially not in the first week, and especially not to a team that had college football playoff potential. But, that one for me was the biggest thing. And then yesterday, what is today, Wednesday? Yeah, Monday, excuse me. Monday, the Tennessee-Florida or Georgia Tech game. That game was absurd. Tennessee, of course, taking that game 42-41 in OT. I couldn't peel my eyes off of it.
Well, and it was that really was a fantastic game. And I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned Tennessee-Georgia Tech, and that's part of the outlook for me is the resurgence of the ACC. Everybody talks about the SEC in college football. Everybody talks about, who's who in the SEC, who's going to win, who is, because the general perception is whoever wins the SEC is going to win the national championship. And while that has been the case a lot over the last few years, the ACC had some good performances last week. Louisville eked out a close one over Purdue, just 35-28, but with Lamar Jackson back in the offense, he had 378 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, and he also added 107 rushing yards. He was the leading passer in the game and the leading rusher in the game. This guy could win a second straight Heisman. It's very, very possible. You also look at a team like Virginia Tech that took down 22nd ranked West Virginia, who is among the top 3 teams in the Big 12. And Virginia Tech came out with a true freshman quarterback and in Josh Jackson, and just flat out beat West Virginia. West Virginia had a chance to win it at the end, but I mean, they were throwing a pass with 2 seconds left from 20 yards out of the end zone and just had to find a spot. So, it wasn't like it was a guaranteed we're going to tie the game and go to overtime. But and then Georgia Tech with a fantastic performance against a very good Tennessee team. Tennessee is of course, they were ranked at number 25. I'm not sure where they are in the new top 25 poll, but they are a very dangerous team with a very, very good defense that Georgia Tech exposed a lot. Taquan Marshall at Georgia Tech, 44 carries, 249 yards, 5 rushing touchdowns against that defense. That's a big performance, and Georgia Tech had a chance to win it at the end. And, a lot of people are going to talk about the decision to go for 2.
Yeah.
And I think it was a great decision because, and I've talked about this with a couple of people, if you lose a game to a ranked opponent in the first week on a missed 2-point conversion in overtime, that's not going to hurt you that much.
It doesn't look bad.
No.
They tried.
No, and that's, and against a very good team. So the ACC is here to stay, I think. I think they had some good performances in week 1, and they had some building performances in week 1 as well. Some performances that you can build on, with the exception of Florida State, of course, losing DeAndre Francois, and that's not what you want to see from a program, is to lose your superstar quarterback and to bring in a true freshman. But, they're still going to be a good football team, but I think the ACC now lies in the hands of Clemson and Louisville, which one of those elite offenses can really take down each other and try to win the ACC.
At the before the college football season even started, watching ESPN and all the these different shows, and they're always talking about the most NFL ready quarterback. And one name that has always been thrown out there was Josh Rosen. And watching the UCLA Texas A&M game, they got down by 34. I literally turned the game off. I was like, well, I mean, Rosen's not going to the NFL. I just happened, to click back to the game, and they're down like 7 points, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And just absurd. He went, him and Caleb Wilson, I think is tight end. Yeah, Caleb Wilson. They connected for 15 catches, 208 yards. And just for a tight end, I don't really see a lot of tight ends in college football going off like that. I mean, that's like Travis Kelce numbers, hopefully. Sorry, I had to plug the Chiefs there really fast. But no, you can't overlook a 34-point comeback week 1. Granted, they're both, I believe, were unranked teams, but I mean,
maybe not for long.
Yeah, not for long with Josh Rosen at the helm of that offense. Geez, look out.
Well, and if you mentioned Wilson had with over 200 receiving yards on 15 catches, and Josh Rosen almost 500 passing yards, 491, 4 touchdowns. He went 59 passes. He threw 59 passes in that game. That is not a college football number.
No.
And as if the comparisons to Dan Marino were not already there for Josh Rosen, the fake spike on the game-winning touchdown sealed it for a lot of people, scoring 28 points in the fourth quarter and holding. The UCLA defense did a great job holding Texas A&M to no points in the fourth quarter, as well as very good offense at Texas A&M. But the story of that game was certainly Josh Rosen, and wow, did he show up, especially in the second half.
I'm just here reading on this article, and I guess on Drive 9, they have the pro style offense, that sort of thing, and they kind of changed their packages, and they went obviously 11 people on the field. They had 1 running back and one tight end, and they had 3 wide receivers with a tight end option. And then ever since that, it just kind of seemed to open up the field, and Rosen's eyes just lit up, and he could throw that thing wherever he wanted. And you mentioned 59 passes. I mean, if you eventually do that and the field's open enough, one of those is going to get through and get a touchdown. And that's what kind of started to happen. And, they got the steam rolling, and there's no stopping the Rosen train. He needs a better nickname than that. I'll think
the Rosen train's not. Yeah. That's not very good. You tried.
Yeah, I know. But Josh Rosen, I think he's one of those players that you really need to watch. If they can, kind of grab the coattails of Josh Rosen, I think you might see them shoot up the top 25 chart.
I think it's very possible, and I think the Pac-12 needs to look out. Let's take a little bit of a look at what we're going to see this week, this coming week here from college football, and it all kicks off, I guess. Tonight is Idaho State, Utah State, battle of some mid-major schools that a lot of people don't think about, but Idaho State's got a pretty good team. They've got a solid running game taking on Utah State. Then Friday night, another couple of games of some mid-major teams. UCF Memphis, a battle in the American Conference. Mackenzie Milton of UCF last week, 360 yards, 4 touchdowns, and then Darrell Henderson from Memphis last week as well, 169 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns on 12 carries. So some explosive offenses in that game as well. We'll take a look at some of the bigger games then on Saturday. Louisville, North Carolina. They take the field at 11 o'clock on ESPN on Saturday. Of course, we mentioned Lamar Jackson, but a North Carolina team that lost a close one to Cal week 1 in a very tough game. Louisville's going to have a test on their hands.
And obviously, you mentioned Lamar Jackson. One game that really interests me is the Ohio State-Oklahoma Sooners game. That's going to be, probably a shootout. But, the Buckeyes really kind of struggled early on against Indiana last week. So it'll be interesting to see what Urban Meyer kind of does to, get rid of those jitters from week 1. And I'm sure they're going to come out, stronger, more focused against a more, higher caliber team, like the Oklahoma Sooners. Baker Mayfield back there, he's one of the dark horse candidates to win the Heisman this year. He's been top, 3 or 4 in the past 2 years. But obviously, Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield, they'll probably go head-to-head in that Heisman chase. But yeah, Ohio State, JT Barrett. I have one of my good buddies is a all-out Ohio State fan, and he's always telling me about, hey, did you hear about this this 5-star recruit that just committed? Hey, did you hear about this 4-star recruit or this 5-star recruit? And he's always talking about their defensive backs and the core that they have, and they're just so talented. I'd say the Ohio State Buckeyes are probably one of the most talented teams in the league. Doesn't mean that they're the best. I'd still obviously say right now that Alabama's the best, just because they mesh well. They all know how to run that system down there. And there's a lot of younger people and younger talent, mind you, on this Ohio State Buckeyes team. So I don't know. I mean, jitters are always going to play a factor.
Well, and when you get two teams that high in the rankings, we're talking a 2 versus a 5 here, and two storied programs. Ohio State, of course, probably the program with one of the most traditions in the Big Ten, and Oklahoma, of course, is the cream of the crop in the Big 12, and those are 2 conferences who really don't like each other, and they're going to be 2 teams who really don't like each other because of the history that they have, both. As we take a look at some other teams that are some top 25 teams that are facing maybe some trap games this week, as we look at, we've got TCU and Arkansas at 2:30 on CBS. TCU 23 in the country. Arkansas coming off of a good win last week, and Arkansas, as always, a good rushing offense, a solid defense. So TCU is going to have to look out in that game. And 4th-ranked Penn State is at home in Happy Valley at Beaver Stadium at University Park, Pennsylvania, but they have a very, very tough Pittsburgh squad coming in. They took on Youngstown State last week. A team that appeared in the FCS National Championship game last year. They had a tough game, but Pittsburgh is not a rollover team, and Penn State is going to have to show up and play in that game as well. We see some matchups between some ranked teams. We've got Georgia and Notre Dame, 15 versus 24 at Notre Dame Stadium in South Bend, Indiana. Notre Dame is actually favored in that game, even though they're ranked a little bit lower because they're at home. That will be a fun one. We also look at Stanford USC. Stanford ranked number 14, coming off a win 2 weeks ago in Australia. They took down, who did they beat in that game? Took down Rice, 62-7 in Australia. 2 weeks ago. USC, of course, with the win last week, and that will be another good game in L.A. at the Coliseum. And we also look at Auburn and Clemson from Memorial Stadium in Clemson, South Carolina. The third-ranked Tigers take on the 13th-ranked, also Tigers of Auburn. Clemson is favored in that game as well, but Auburn has really made a resurgence these last couple of years after some rocky starts in the SEC, but ranked number 13 right now. Of course, sitting at 1-0, but they're looking pretty good, and they're going to be a tough test for Clemson.
Absolutely,
really the first test of the year for the Tigers.
Talk about two teams that don't like each other. We're gonna find out who the real Tigers are, I guess, so to speak. I'm not actually sure who the quarterback for Clemson is. Do you have any idea?
It is, I believe, Kelly Bryant.
Kelly Bryant, that's right. I couldn't think of the dude's name. I mean, obviously, you still have a very good core of players there at Clemson. But, you talk about Auburn making that resurgence. I kind of forgot about them in the last couple of years. They just, haven't been there. So it'll be interesting to see if they figured out all their issues, and it's gonna be tough to take down the number 3 Clemson Tigers. But we'll see. Anything happens, and college football is one crazy season. Well,
and you mentioned we talked about Kelly Bryant last week. A very, very efficient day last week. 16 for 22, 236 yards and a touchdown. Very careful with the football, and that's what you got to be against a good Auburn team. And we take a look, and let's just take a quick, deeper look at what Clemson's got. They have this game against Auburn. Then next week, it's at 17th ranked Louisville. That will probably be the ACC championship game, unless this true freshman quarterback at Florida State just absolutely
falls on his
torches
face.
Everything.
Oh.
And then it's at home against Boston College, a team that came away with a really big win last week, and at 18th ranked Virginia Tech the next week. So a very, very tough stretch of games for the Clemson Tigers, and they're going to be lucky to come out of there with only one loss, let alone if they can come out of there undefeated. That will be 2 games on the road at Louisville and at Virginia Tech that are really going to be there to watch for Clemson. And the other thing I want to take a look at is where Georgia Tech is this week. Georgia Tech is taking on Jacksonville State this week, so a rebound game for them after the tough loss to Tennessee. But you look at a guy like Taquan Marshall, the quarterback, 5 for 9, 120 yards. He can throw the ball. He proved that. And 249 yards rushing and 5 rushing touchdowns, which, as a quarterback, you would think is unheard of, but it really isn't in Georgia Tech's offense. It's not. It's unusual for a quarterback to have 44 carries, but it's not unusual for a quarterback to rush for almost 250 yards in Georgia Tech's offense. And I think Taquan Marshall could potentially lead the nation in rushing this year.
That's what I thought you were going to say. My eyes kind of lit up. But, I mean, with those kind of stats, I mean, anything's possible. I mean, you look at what Lamar Jackson did last year, and, I mean, he's set up to kind of do the same thing, just throwing the ball less.
and that's what could be very, very interesting, is you look at a guy like Taquan Marshall, rather, and he was number 1 in rushing last week. In fact, 2 quarterbacks led in rushing last week. Taquan Marshall at Georgia Tech had 249 yards, and Zach Abey, the quarterback from Navy, coming out of a 42-19 win at Florida Atlantic, had 235 yards rushing. And if they can keep that kind of momentum up, Taquan Marshall could potentially have 200 yards per game this year because of how well that offense works, because of how well they run the triple option, and really it's a hybrid triple option because they do have a passing attack, something you don't see as much in the military academies, Navy, Army, Air Force, that run basically a straight triple option. As we saw Ahmad Bradshaw at Army as well, 9 carries for 177 yards and 2 scores from the quarterback position as well. But that's something to look out for, is Taquan Marshall could be, right now anyway, in the argument for the Heisman.
Yeah, I mean, it's real early to start talking about it, but I mean, when do you start talking about it? Why can't we start talking about it now? I mean,
especially a guy that can do that every game.
Oh, my. Mm-hmm.
You know, you talk about, I mean, there were some guys that put up some big performances. Drew Lock with 521 yards and 7 touchdowns.
Yeah.
A guy like Shea Patterson at Ole Miss that had 429 yards and 4 touchdowns as well. Some of those guys, but also there are very few that can do that every game. Josh Rosen's a guy that can throw for 491 yards every game.
Mm-hmm.
Lamar Jackson is a guy that can have almost 500 combined yards every game between passing and rushing. And Taquan Marshall's a guy that can rush for 200 yards a game if he really wanted to. And that's something to really look at, and that's what I think they'll consider as far as a Heisman conversation is the guys that can go out every game and put up that kind of number.
Who's winning the Heisman right now?
Right now, it's Lamar Jackson again with 485 total yards last week between 378 passing and 107 rushing. That those are Heisman numbers, and I think Lamar Jackson right now has the best chance to repeat for the first time since Archie Griffin. Mm-hmm. And so that will be interesting to look at. This week in college football will be interesting to look at. And that has been the X106 podcast for Ryan Elliott. For Evan Brown, rather. I'm Ryan Elliott. And thanks for listening. And once again, you've been listening to the X106 podcast.